everybody. Scotty Milas here. All Things Considered Franchising, powered by ScottMilasFranchiseCoach.com. All Things Considered Franchising is a podcast devoted to the franchising industry, entrepreneurship, and business ownership. Scott Milas Franchise Coach is an organization that helps people research and explore business ownership, exploring franchise opportunities, and comparing them to independent options. Today's guest, Jeff Hughes, president and founder of Skilled Samurai. Jeff, great to be here. Great to have you.
Likewise, it's good to see you again. It's been
a while
since before the pandemic. So
yes. You know, Jeff, and one of the reasons I wanted to have you on on the podcast is for two reasons. One, you're in that category of an emerging brand. And I always have found emerging brands to be fascinating because when you think about franchises, and again, I say this probably 9 out of 10 times on my podcast, on every podcast, there's a lot more to McDonald's and the $5 footlong. But those brands at one point were emerging brands. I mean, let's face it, they had to have their first franchisee, they had to have their second, they had to have their 100th, and so on. So your story in the franchising as an emerging brand has becoming well known. It's a brand that's getting a lot of attention and recognition, but also as an individual, your passion for education, coding and STEM education. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the STEM, meaning science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, because as we all know, and we're hearing it every day, in order to compete in today's society, science, technology, engineering, mathematics are very important. Teaching our young kids the importance, not so much kicking a soccer ball, but mathematics, engineering, science, and technology. So welcome on, Jeff. Good to have you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Let's start out by talking about a little bit about the brand. So why don't you take 60 seconds, kind of give us an idea of, what got you into this or how you got into the category, your passion, and, waking up one morning and deciding, hey, look, I'm going to franchise this and bring it to the United States.
Yeah. So when I look back on my life, I really can see one of my driving forces has been empowering people through education and seeing the ability of education to change people's lives, and through that change generations, like change their children's lives. I've mentioned before that my mom was illiterate. She was an immigrant to Canada. And when I began in kindergarten, I began teaching her how to read. So she learned how to read as I was. And, through that, seeing the changes that it made in her life, being able to get a job. And then in particular in STEM, I was, I went to my kids' school one day, and at the time they had 350 kids and 3 computers. Wow. And I compared that. It seems shocking now. I think at the time, Estonia had comprehensive computer science from kindergarten all the way through high school. And I thought, how are my kids going to get in the future? How is this country, how is the US going to be able to be competitive if our kids don't have the same skill sets that everyone else does? So my one of my business goals was to start a franchisable company. So at the time, I was working for a company that was franchised as a franchise coach. So I was already kind of in that, and I presented my idea to them. And then they really helped mentor me for the first 3 years in the design, the development of the franchise model, training, things like that. So it was really, the idea came first to franchise, and then I needed to find the right business to do it.
When you look at the profile of your organization and the STEM education category, I wouldn't call it a crowded field, but it's a competitive field. And I've always been a believer that competition is good, but in some cases, you either got to be a little bit uniquely different or better than the people that are in the category. So when you look at your organization and how you approached this when you were decided to franchise it and build a franchise system, become a franchisor, what was your focus to be a little bit different than what was already out there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So um, one thing we did was we took coding out of our name and we took kids out of our name, which sounds kind of odd, but our focus is really in that belief, the belief that in the future there will always be a gap between what schools can teach and what employers are looking for. So in that gap are the skills that we're going to teach. And at the moment, that is heavily computer science and coding. I don't know what that's going to be in 10 years, but I know there will be a gap. So that's the first focus. So our owners aren't stuck teaching kids coding 10 years from now if that's no longer needed.
Great.
And
No, and no, go on. I'm sorry.
yeah, that's okay. And the second part is we really focus on preparing kids for future careers. That our focus isn't, hey, kids, coding is fun. It's get them using real professional tools so that they're ready for jobs when they graduate from high school.
When parents look at STEM education, coding, sometimes parents will say, and I know being a parent and now grandkids, my daughter or son is 6 years old, 7 years old. They're still trying to figure out what direction they want to go in. They really enjoy kicking the soccer ball or playing in Little League. How important is the science, technology, engineering, mathematics to the future of those children as they start to get older and enter what I call the real world? I mean,
Right.
are parents sometimes, and again, this isn't a knock on today's parents, but are we being blind to what the world or where the world is and the direction the world's going to? Should this be an important part of the curriculum with children today?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, we sent our flyers home at a school. One of the girls was 5 years old. Her name was Olivia. She brought it home to her mom and said, "Mom, I'm 5 years old and I don't know how to code yet." She got her parents to sign her up, and she was with us for like the next 5 years. Um, I've heard it said that 85% of jobs that will exist in 2030, so 7 years, don't exist yet. So all these kids that are in school presently, my youngest is now in a freshman in high school. So looking ahead 7 years, she'll be graduating from college. We don't know what jobs she's going to be graduating into. So by introducing kids at a young age to computer science and giving them a spark to learn more, that helps. It also improves their confidence. So they learn one language, they will feel confident to learn more. And the earlier they're exposed to it in a positive way, the more likely they are to keep taking it through high school and college.
Right. I never graduated college. I was just never that college kind of guy. I always tell people I was the kind of guy that if I put my hand on the stove, it was hot. I know not to put my hand on the stove. Again, there's been a lot of talk and chitter chatter about the necessity of college education. And sometimes people look at coding, STEM education as a gateway to college or a benefit to being college. But let's flip it for a second. Is this, and there's been a lot of talk recently, and again, that chitter chatter about trade schools, trade. Can STEM education and coding be tied into a trade? Is this necessarily, well, if I'm going to send my kids to your school, they're going to go to college, or is it more of, I want to educate my kids so maybe they can, take this and be anything. Maybe they can take it to, any type of trade. I mean, you follow what I'm trying to get at here? I mean, is it, people always seem to associate this with college education or future of college education.
Right. Yeah. In a lot of our material, we present this as an alternative to college. So recently, Google, Tesla, Netflix, Amazon have all said that you don't need a college degree to work for them. They are looking for experience and a set of credentials. So when we are preparing students through high school, by the time they graduate, they would have 4 years of experience programming. And then they can also earn the certification for Amazon or Google, ideally to make them career ready, get an entry-level job. which pays really well, and skip college. So for some families, some students, that's really the way they'd want to go.
Right.
Other jobs, we're still stuck going to college. So we presented as, hey, this could really enhance your resume, your application for college, or it could allow you to get jobs without going to college.
Great, great. Let's shift gears a little bit in the type of franchisees that you're looking for the organization. If I was having a general conversation with a client of mine and, kind of connecting the dots and helping them look into certain categories, where is that best fit franchisee for your organization? Where is it, what are some of the not so much qualifications, because people have a tendency to think qualifications is quantitative, and I don't think it's necessarily the case, but that's how people look at qualifications. But what are the characteristics of somebody that would be interested, or you see as a benefit or a credential that would be interested in your organization?
I think 60% of our new owners from last year came from education. Most of them were teachers. One of them was a vice principal. All of them had a spouse who was in finance or technology. So they're coming at it saying, hey, you know what? I get to teach on my terms. I'm not teaching for a district or as part of a school. And they have a value in education and specifically in STEM. So that was really interesting to see. Prior to that, it was a lot of people with a technology background,
Right.
and they are looking for a second revenue stream. Maybe they're looking towards retirement. We all know with the pandemic that there was a lot of job uncertainty. So people who before thought they had kind of a job for life are now thinking, well, let's do something in my field that could take care of my family if something happens to my job. And teaching technology seems like a good fit. So those would be the two main groups. And then the third group is more of that investor who is buying it to buy three of them and have a manager over all three of them. Okay. So the teacher, the IT person, or the investor.
So there is this what we call in the industry, that semi-absentee role.
Right.
Again, I've always said that let's be careful with semi-absentee, because you don't want to invest all, considerable amount of money into something and then just hand the keys over to somebody else. But the programs that your schools are offering, and we talk about teachers because teachers are typically, 8 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, depending on the grade level. Is this something a teacher could do because it's after school programs? Or is it before school? I mean, when a teacher, sometimes teachers look for different avenues, revenue drivers. Is this something a teacher or a professor, because of the flexibility, they only work from 8 to 3? It's a hard job, 8 to 3, but, and then maybe have the summers off, there's a vacations. Is that a consideration as well?
Yeah, definitely. So our programs do typically run from 4 till 8, Monday to Friday. Saturday mornings, and then through the summer. So it would definitely work with that role. When we talk about who they're hiring, we refer to them as coaches. 98% of our content, our curriculum, is self-directed. So we hire first and second year university students, seniors in high school, to just kind of be there to cheer on and support the students. But there's very little upfront teaching. So the role of the owner is really one of network marketing, building a network in their city, talking to principals, talking to school officials, and getting more students. Some of them teach because they want to. They'll teach a class or two. But for the most part, like a lot of businesses, we want them growing their business, not just being in there teaching.
You don't want them behind the grill flipping burgers. You want them.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the way.
Once you're there, it's hard.
Yeah,
that happened to me. My first business was a pizza restaurant. And when I got to the spot where I had to be making pizzas 60 hours a week instead of growing the business, it was all downhill because I just bought a really expensive job.
Yeah, no, that's good. And of course, your industry, the services in the industry that you're in, education obviously plays an integral part in giving back to the community, right? I mean, that I would think that there has to be that charitable side to someone giving back, because that's an important part to the networking side of growing the business. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we do encourage that locally. They'll volunteer at a Boys and Girls Club or different community groups in their city. They're probably people that will never be their customer, but they still really need this kind of content. And then we do that globally as well. So in September, we built our first orphanage in India, and so there are 12 boys living there. We also sponsor 12 children in a safe house in Nairobi. So they are getting kind of informal education on the path to preparation for more formal education. We also sponsor other projects like teaching women business and sewing skills in Bangladesh. Globally, again, with that idea of empowering people through education, that is something that I take to heart personally. And we want our owners to do that locally wherever they can.
Great. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk
Sure.
about some of our listeners maybe sitting in a seat that you used to sit in, having an idea or have a business, and they're thinking about franchising it, or have been, approached about why don't you franchise your business versus staying as an independent and growing it yourself, kind of those independent
Right.
shops versus a franchise. What drew you to franchising as an industry and taking that route versus saying, hey, I'm going to do this on my own and kind of have that independent direction?
Yeah. So during our first 3 summers when we were running camps, we went from 3 cities to 6 cities to 13 cities. And at every stop, my wife would say, why are you doing this? Why aren't you just happy right here? And then when my switch after I tested it in 13 cities to then selling franchises, again, like, why are you just not happy running these 13 cities? And A, that wasn't the plan, but B, and probably more importantly, I can't be in those cities sharing my passion for computer science. I can't be there talking to the principals and networking. So in this role, since it requires or benefits so much from conversations, it really made sense to have committed people in different cities with that same passion who could grow the vision and expand it. So it really it wouldn't spread, and the message wouldn't have spread as well if it was just me from my office.
Great. So if you were giving somebody some advice who's thinking about franchising their business, let's forget about the category or anything or whatever, but what are maybe 1 or 2 things that they should be asking themselves or researching or educating themselves on about franchising their business? With your experience, look, this isn't easy, franchising a business. Obviously the end game is a lot more financially rewarding, the exit strategy, than if you had a couple of independent business. To get the financial side on the royalties, the earnings on the royalties, the payout, whether it's private equity or whatever it may be versus independence, that's a whole separate conversation, but it's a lot higher. But what are the 1 or 2 things, like I said, if somebody was thinking about franchising their business, they had a couple of locations open, what would you say are the first 2 important things, or things that they really should look at first?
Yeah, I would say, can the business run without them? So if it's 1 location or a couple, can it be done without them doing all the daily tasks? So that would require them to make sure that they have systems set up, a revenue system, staffing system, have all those systems in place. They won't be as good as they'll need to be. I find that out like every 6 months. As we add more people, we need to reinforce those systems. But the business needs to be able to run without them there. So can it do well with a different owner, a semi-absentee owner? So how can they test that? So if they're running it in another city, could they train that person and be more hands-off? really, because that's important to know. Like, no one is buying a business to buy a job.
Right.
So first, can they replace themselves out of their business? Because I also think you can't both sell franchises and run your local business. So you first need to replace yourself, see if it's profitable, functioning, and then get other people to buy in.
Interesting. I would also seem to think that being able to duplicate the systems from one location to another is important. That operational side, it's there may be a number of moving parts, but you want to be able to duplicate them. And I don't like to use the word easy, but be able to manage those systems. So if somebody coming in like myself wanted to be a franchisee, I could take that manual and run with those systems and duplicate where you've been successful on your own. Correct?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a big part of it is someone told me before, like, write down everything you're doing because someone else will need to know how to do that. And of course, I didn't do that right away. So I'm still writing down things like, hey, Jeff, how do you run a birthday party? Write that all down so that people can see that. But yeah, having the systems, having it written down so that people can easily follow it as a guide to have the same success you are having.
Great, great. Um, the amount of time, or there are important things in life. I mean, family comes into play, work-life balance. I think your organization brand gives a lot of options for work-life balance. It's not necessarily, like you said, a restaurant or a business that requires 7 days of operation, 16 hours a day. When you look at the work-life balance, and again, you did this on your own, you came out of corporate America, so to speak, that listener right now that's thinking about exiting corporate America, or maybe taking an independent store that they have and turning it into a franchise, how important is it to stay on track on that work-life balance and to keep your family involved, or focus in on the important things of in life?
Yeah, I'd say it's number one. So when I started, I was up every morning working from 5 until 7. Then my kids would get up, I'd be with them. They go to school at 8. I would work until 5, and then I made sure I was with them every evening for supper. So from 5 till 8. Back then they went to bed at 8, and then most nights I'd put in a couple more hours. It was what it required. Not doing that as much now, but really having that time every night with my family was critical. 9 years ago, they were how old?
Scary, huh?
I know. It was like 5, 7, and 9. So yeah, it was really, really important for me and for my wife to be there. Again, having had a restaurant where I was working way too much. And then the best part was being on vacation and being with my family camping and realizing that I had camps running in 13 cities with staff running them, making me money, and I was at the beach. So you do need to do the work. You'll get the benefits of being an entrepreneur if you put in all of the work of being an entrepreneur. And some days there just isn't that balance. I think I heard a teaching once about we all talk about juggling balls, and an entrepreneur, a family person, needs to decide some days which balls he's going to drop, because you can't juggle them all the time.
Right.
So, and if I'm going to drop something, it's going to be on the business side even now, and keep the family side in my hands.
Great. Well, we're running out of time here, but when you look at the vision of your organization, Skill Samurai, and let's flash forward 3, 4, 5 years from now, what do you see? I mean, obviously you're looking to grow the brand. You're looking to be national. You're already international, because I believe you're in Singapore, Australia, and Canada, as well as in the US. But where do you see yourself, the brand, in 3, 4, 5 years? Still going to be involved in it, really looking to build it?
Yeah, we are. Even now we are in talks with lots of partners, but increasing our revenue streams and our curriculum pathways. So right now in STEM, we're really strong on science, technology, and engineering. Nothing on math. So, depending on when this airs, sometime in March, we'll be launching a comprehensive math curriculum. So because a lot of times it's the same parents, so they're looking to enrich their child's grades, improve their grades. So the parents looking for math are often looking for coding as well. So that will be a kindergarten through grade 6 program. And that's another revenue stream for our owners. And then the goal is to be the largest enrichment education provider. So we're doing that, one franchise at a time at this point.
Great. The best way for somebody to get a hold of you if they wanted to learn more about Skill Samurai? I mean, is there an email address you want to share, a website?
Sure. Yeah, the website is skillsamurai.com, and they can email me, jeff@skillsamurai.com.
Great. Obviously, they can also reach out to me, Scotty Milas, franchisecoach.com. Visit my website, also scottmilasfranchisecoach.com. Jeff, I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I hope we can, 12, 14, 15 months from now, we can get you back and have another perspective of what's going on. But we thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Anything you'd like to say, or we forgot to ask you?
No, I appreciate your time today. It was a lot of fun.
Great. Well, everybody, this is Scotty Milas, All Things Considered Franchising, powered by scottmilasfranchisecoach.com. Thank you for listening. Make it a great day.